So glymphatics are related to cerebral microvascular disease. And some people are not familiar with glymphatics, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I have a separate video that will go into more details on glymphatics if you're interested. Um, but basically, glymphatics is the lymphatic system of the brain. It was named in 2012. And it, like the lymphatic system in the rest of the body, it cleans the brain of waste, and it dumps that waste into the lymphatic system for the rest of the body. It also transports cerebral spinal fluid from the subarachnoid space to mix with the interstitial fluid in the parenchyma. There are 5 fluids in the brain. The glymphatics only make up a small percentage. The blood makes up 10%. Cerebral spinal fluid also 10%. Interstitial fluid is 12 to 20%. And by far the largest amount of fluid in the brain is the intracellular fluid inside the cells, 60 to 68%. So the glymphatics at times are part of the extracellular fluid when they go into the brain or the parenchyma to wash it. And so there's a little, the glymphatics are a little bit hard to know how much they actually are. But the blood, which we're talking about for the cerebral microvascular disease, is only 10%, but it surely can make a big impact on the brain function. So when we're talking about the glymphatics and talking about how they transport the cerebral spinal fluid in the subarachnoid space to then mix with the interstitial fluid in the parenchyma or the brain mass, let's take a look and see what's going on with the anatomy. So we're going to take a little slice of the cranium, and here's the bone right here on the left at the top. Then under that, we're going to have that epidural space. So people know about epidural because for having babies, some people will have an epidural. And that's when they put the pain medicine between the bone and the dura mater, which is a layer of the meninges, the bag that holds the brain and the spinal cord. Under the epidural space, you have the dura, right? Epi is above. And then under that, you have the subdural below space. And then you have the arachnoid mater. That means spider. And so you can see it looks like a spider web. And so under that is the subarachnoid space. And so the subarachnoid space is where the glymphatics transport the cerebral spinal fluid. And you can see under that, there's the pia mater, and that's very, very delicate. And so it's easy for the glymphatics to then move into the parenchyma and mix with the interstitial fluid there in the brain. And so here's a side view showing the parenchyma, which is the brain matter, the subarachnoid space in yellowish orange, gold. And then that's the interface pretty much where the glymphatics move. The glymphatic system works as a low pressure fluid transport system, and it moves in the perivascular space of the cerebral arteries and veins. So that means it moves around the arteries and veins, around the arterioles and venules. It's regulated by the astrocyte feet and aquaporin. So here's a blood vessel, and this is the astrocyte with the little feet on the blood vessel. Now we're going to take a close-up of that. Here's the feet, and then here's the aquaporin 4. And that's kind of like a little door, so you get some exchange of fluid and ions and such. And here's the perivascular space around the vasculature. And that is where the glymphatic system moves. So its primary job is to clear waste. So it could be the amyloid beta, the tau, or many other forms of waste, and they dump that from the brain, from the circulatory system in the brain into the lymphatic system, the general lymphatic system. Another thing the glymphatic system does is to transport glucose, lipids, amino acids, neurotransmitters, antigens, and immune cells. It also exchanges information via the afferent and efferent immune pathways. Like I mentioned before, it's a low pressure fluid transport system, and it works primarily when we sleep. And so if we're not good sleepers, then we won't have good glymphatic flow. Again, it moves in the perivascular space, so around the arteries, arterioles, the veins, and the venules, regulated by the astrocyte feet and the aquaporin 4, and stimulated by the vagus nerve. So that's parasympathetic. The things that decrease glymphatic function are basically the same things that impair cerebral small vessel disease function. So it's heart problems, sleep problems, problems with the cerebral spinal fluid movement, problems with the astrocytes, problems with the lymphatic drainage out of the head, problems with the autonomic nervous system, and problems with blood pressure. If we have an impaired glymphatic system, this will lead to accumulation of waste in the brain. That will lead to neuroinflammation in the brain and ultimately neurodegeneration. So, great ways to optimize glymphatics are to sleep. Take care of your brain vascular health, exercise, and either avoid alcohol or only drink it sparingly. So there's a big overlap of risk factors for cerebral small vessel disease and glymphatic dysfunction. They both are very susceptible to hypertension, type 2 diabetes, sleep disturbances, aging, and neuroinflammation. So we used to think that cognitive impairment that's associated with the cerebral small vessel disease was caused by hypoperfusion and hypoxia. But now studies seem to suggest that the real contributor for cognitive impairment associated with cerebral small vessel disease is actually glymphatic dysfunction. The hallmark microinfarctions associated with cerebral small vessel disease also impair glymphatic flow, and this leads to decreased cerebral waste clearance. Cerebral small vessel disease is associated with excessive microglial activation, reactive astrocytes that then cause the aquaporin 4 dysregulation and impaired glymphatic flow. So taking care of your glymphatics is really important.